When we read the Bible, we think it's an old book, describing things that happened unnumbered years ago. As I tell you, it's contemporary. We read about the flood, and we think, well, certainly that happened unnumbered. If it ever did happen, it happened unnumbered years ago. Well, this morning, as is my custom, I turned on the channel KFAC, that is a radio station. It plays through the day and night, 24 hours a day. Only lovely classical music, so you can read to that music. Only a few interruptions. On the hour, you get a 5-minute bulletin and weather report. Now, between 9 and 10, it's always a lovely piano recital, as it were. The great masterpieces played by great artists. And so I can sit down with my Bible and read as I listen to the music. And the one interruption that came today was an ad from the Herald Examiner. And they were advertising this paper as the one paper in our city that gives the facts, only facts, not embellished. No frills, just plain facts, all facts. That's why we should buy that paper, because it's simply filled with facts. Well, facts have overflowed the world like the flood. Man actually is drowned with facts, victimized by facts. It is in the imagination that everything lives, and not in its actuality, not in the fact. Unless imagination penetrates the fact, the deluge remains a deluge. We are now in the deluge. This is the flood. A man is in jail, that's a fact. And he knows he's there for X number of years, that's a fact. And he simply waits and hopes that in some strange way that he will get some early release from this confinement. He never uses his imagination, save in some violent way to get out, but to penetrate the fact. When in March of 1943, by using my imagination to penetrate the fact that I too was in prison in the army, but I didn't want any part of it. And so I simply penetrated the fact and saw myself in New York City in my own apartment with my family. And in 9 days, I was out honorably discharged in my apartment in New York City. So I wrote a friend of mine who was in the army. He was my age. He was a Freudian, a professional psychoanalyst. But Freud was his background. That was his schooling. And when I wrote him in detail exactly what I had done, I didn't mince matters. I told him exactly what I did. How as I simply physically slept on my little bed in the barracks, I imagined I was simply elsewhere, and the elsewhere was a definite spot in space, in New York City, in my apartment. And what I did, I could feel the bed, I could feel the things. my house, I went about feeling all the familiar objects in my apartment, and I gave them all the tones of reality and all sensory vividness to the best of my ability. And I touched everything, and it felt real. Then I went back to sleep, and then I told exactly what happened to me that morning. And then 9 days later, I was honorably discharged by the same man that had disallowed my application. He didn't answer my letter. Because in New York City, he used to come to my meetings as a friend, because he was so convinced that the Freudian concept was true. But he said, I come to your meetings for this reason, Neville. We knew each other well. He'd come home for dinner, I'd go to his place for dinner, but he said, I come to your meetings because you turn my daily bread into the substance of fairy. I sort of like that, he said. But when I listen to you, I hold the chair, and I put my... my feet right firmly on the ground to feel the reality and the profundity of things. You aren't going to take me away with you. You're going to leave me right here where things are solidly real, so I feel the place under my foot, and I feel the things next to my hand, and I hold on tightly as you weave your story concerning moving off in one's imagination. So he would not penetrate the facts. So when did he get out? When the other millions got out. So he remained with his facts for the next 3 years. I got out in March of 43. He came home to New York City in 46, demobilized as the other millions and millions of boys were. He could not let go of the facts. This is the flood, no other flood. This is the flood. We are drowned with facts, victimized by them. Now, does the Bible teach this story of getting through the facts using my imagination? It certainly does. But let me take you into the 27th chapter of the book of Genesis, the first book, the book of the beginning. If you're not familiar with the story of Isaac and his 2 sons, they were twins. Let me just refresh your memory if you've forgotten. It is said in the story that Isaac had, that is, his wife had the 2 sons, Rebekah, but he was the father of the 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. It is said that Esau was a hairy one. He came out first. And then Jacob came out second, and he had no hair. He was completely hairless, while Esau was covered in hair from head to foot. But he was the first. One was called Esau, and one was called Jacob, because he came out second and supplanted the other. Now we are told that when the father Isaac was old, and his eye was dim so that he could not see, in other words, he was blind, he said to his son Esau, I cannot see, and my days are numbered. I want you to go into the fields and hunt, and bring me some well-prepared, tasty venison as I like it, savory venison. We are told that Rebekah, who loved her second son more than she did the first, overheard the conversation between Esau and his father. And then because she loved Jacob and wanted Jacob to get the blessing, for the father feels his days are numbered, and he must now give his blessing to one of his sons, and the first one must get it. So the mother told Jacob what she had heard, and then suggested that we take one of the kids from the flock, and we kill it, and take the skins of the kid and put it upon you, so that you will have the appearance of Esau. Esau thought otherwise. He said, suppose my father discovered it. Then Jacob said, suppose my father discovered it. And the mother said, leave that to me. It will be on my shoulder if he discovers it. And send Jacob into the field to bring a kid. Well, he took that kid and brought it, tastily prepared for his father. He came quickly into the presence of the father. And the father said to him, come near, that I may feel you, my son, whether you are my son Esau or not. So Jacob came near to Isaac his father, who felt him. And then Isaac said to Jacob, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And then he blessed him. He gave him his blessing. He had no sooner left the presence of his father when Esau comes in now with savory venison. And the father said, well, who was it that came? For I have already eaten. Who came? And then he discovered it was his son Jacob who came with guile and betrayed him. But said the father, I have given him your blessing and I cannot retract it. And blessed he is. All will serve him. Everyone will serve him. Because I gave you the blessing and I cannot take it back. Now on the surface, you will say, now what is the story trying to tell us? Well, in this same book, in an earlier passage, we are told about the ark. Build the ark with 3 decks, the lower, the second, and the third deck. Well, you think it's a huge big building. Well, you use your imagination. You can't conceive of any building that could house all the animals of the world in pairs. And all the so-called good ones will be in 7 pairs. And enough food to feed them for 40 days and 40 nights. Well, you just simply could not conceive of it. Nevertheless, that's the story. But there are 3 decks. The obvious thing is the facts of life. Then there's psychological interpretation of these so-called stories. And then the spiritual consummation of the story. So you have the lower deck, the second deck, and then the third deck. So here is a perfect example of the second deck. This room now is a fact. We're all in the room. It's a fact. But suppose I don't want to be here. Suppose it becomes a prison to me. Can I get out of it? If I know to penetrate the fact. If I know that I am the ark. That all things exist in the human imagination. And the human imagination and God are one. They are one, not two. I can, in my imagination, penetrate any wall. I can now, without batting an eye, in the twinkle of an eye, I can stand on the street and see this thing without a man standing before it. No problem whatsoever to assume I'm on the street and looking from the street to this platform. But you may say, well, what would that do? Well, let me do it and feel the reality, feel that solidity of the street under my foot and see this building from the street rather than looking to the street from here. If I do it and give it solidity, give it reality, I'll be compelled to go there. This is what Scripture teaches. That is my blessing. I can penetrate a fact. And penetrating a fact, I can stand wherever I want to stand in this world. Then the promise is made, wherever the sole of your foot shall stand, that I have given to you. I'm not going to make you a promise and not fulfill it. I've given to you if you can stand upon it. So I actually stood upon my apartment. I actually stood upon that floor. I felt the bed. I felt everything and gave it reality. My friend wouldn't allow himself to sleep in one place and assume that he was sleeping elsewhere, because that is a divided state of mind. He didn't want to become a split personality, and so he wanted to be completely coordinating. Well, he was coordinated, all right, for the next 3 years, all in one little spot in his barracks. And for 3 years he couldn't get out. Because, first of all, he wouldn't try it. Because I turned his daily bread into the substance of fairy. And so he did not answer my letter. I've reminded him a few times since. Why didn't you answer the letter? Well, first of all, it didn't make sense. And I don't believe, said he, that really what you did was the sole cause of your discharge. You always question it. Then I repeat it another time and tell him again what happened this time. Well, that would have happened anyway. You do it a third time. You do it a fourth time. Do you know if you did it 1,000 times, he would still say, do it once more. It will always happen as far as they're concerned. It just didn't happen because you did something. These things would have happened anyway. So why do you analyze people then? Then let things happen. We are not the creatures of circumstances, said a man who bears your name, for his first name is Israel. And Disraeli's name is simply of Israel, Benjamin Disraeli. And he said, man is not the creature of circumstances. Circumstances are the creatures of men. He knew how to create things, all in his imagination. So he said, you bear the name of Israel, but you don't apply the story of Israel. If you only apply it, so these things are taught us in Scripture. Scripture is not secular history. This is contemporary. It didn't happen thousands of years ago. The flood is on. And this is the flood. The whole vast world is inundated with facts, like this prominent papers, the evening paper, the Examiner. And they're proud of the fact they only print facts. They don't embellish it. No frills, only the facts. Therefore, buy the facts. Well, I can buy the facts. And they go all over the world to find frightening facts. I'm not denying that he didn't kill her. I'm not denying that he did not receive a sentence of X number of Yes. But when people ask anything of me, I'm not concerned about why it happened. What do you want? And I will simply apply my imagination lovingly on behalf of that request. I don't care what brought you to that state. I am here to simply get you out of the state. What do you want? All through the Bible, what do you want? He didn't condemn anyone. The woman taken in adultery, he didn't condemn. So what do you want? Go and sin no more. He didn't call the act of adultery a sin. If she called it, or they called it a sin, all right, call it a sin. Therefore, don't repeat it if you call it a sin. But sin is simply knowing what to do and not doing it. That's sinning. So if I discover what to do, to penetrate the fact, to go beyond the fact, and create a condition for myself, and dwell in it, and think from it, instead of thinking of it. For the great fallacy of the world is perpetual construction, deferred occupancy. Create and create in my mind's eye all kinds of lovely things I would like to realize, but I never occupy them. I do not penetrate the state and go right into it and give it cubic reality. But I know, and you know, and it's not difficult to understand why. The sense of touch is something we believe in more profoundly than we do in, say, the sense of sight, or the sense of hearing, or the sense of smell.